Now that's something to celebrate, but I think it's something to recover. I have been had the opportunity to visit in so many of those community centers, and I've listened to the stories. So many of them began in what was called back 120 years ago, the garment districts, in textile places, in communities. They were begun in places of poverty. They were begun where the literacy rate was such that almost no one who lived in those communities could read. And Methodist women said, we're going there. And we're going to start something. Because the gospel sends us into that place. And so now all over the United States, there are these community centers ministering to children and ministering to the needs of women and ministering to the needs of family, because Methodist women understood that at the intersection of the world's needs and the mandates of the gospel, that's where our mission is. It's not about geography. It's about our understanding of what God is calling us to do and the places where God is sending us. We're trying to duplicate that in many parts of the world. One of the cities that our Methodist Church our United Methodist Church is now working in Thailand is at the very heart of the sex trade industry of the world. On a seacoast in Thailand. And guess what? Right in the middle of that, we have a United Methodist Church. We're the only Protestant denomination in that city. Guess what else we have? We are starting. We don't have a building yet. We're starting an orphanage. Do you know how many children wander the streets because mom has died from HIV/AIDS? And dad is unknown. And we're the only group willing to minister to the children. And our pastor there is a woman. Yeah. It's just astounding that Methodist women have always been where the needs are. I had the great privilege, which doesn't come to all bishops, but I had the chance to preside at General Conference back in 2008. Thankfully, I had an easy afternoon. There wasn't a lot of debate. Thank you, Jesus. When I finished presiding, we had already set this up. I had called ahead, and a couple of us were going to do this. When I had finished presiding that afternoon, Deborah and I got in a van with one other bishop and his spouse and went to a community center that had been started by Methodist women almost 100 years before there in Fort Worth. And we spent the rest of the afternoon playing with the children. Because United Methodist women have said, we're going to be with the children that nobody else cares about. That's who we are. Mission is not about geography. It can be in Thailand. It can be in India. It can be in Africa. It can be on the streets of Fort Worth. It can be in Mount Airy, North Carolina. That's where we are. Those unreasonable women who went to places they weren't supposed to go and engaged in ministry. Mission is never about us. It's always about God. So, to interpret this present time, we have to remember that mission is not about geography. It's about theology. And also to remember that mission means participating in what God is already doing. Now, all of us we're just good, enlightened Americans. We think we come up with all the ideas. Let me rephrase that. We think we come up with all the best ideas. And we think we create mission. That is not good thinking. Mission means we get to participate in what God's already doing. And I never cease to be surprised at what God does. And Methodist women have always been able to anticipate what God is doing, always been able to move just a few steps ahead of everybody else, because that's where God is, going before us. It is a huge mistake if we think we create the mission, because God is already at work doing things. In fact, there's a sense in which God doesn't wait on us. And God does not operate on our timetable. But God invites us to catch up with where God already is. At the meeting in Vietnam, I've lost track of days, 8, 9, 10 days ago, I met a wonderful woman. I had been to her place about a year and a half ago. She, well, she's not a Methodist yet, but we're getting her there. But over the last 25 years, she has developed a heart and a passion for children who continue to be born victims of Agent Orange in the groundwater and in the land where vegetables are grown. And so it started on her own little piece of property. She calls it a farm. It's not a farm like anything we would imagine. So she started an orphanage. And she will keep anywhere from 25 to 40 children and help them move through life and teach them the good news. She gets no support from the government. She gets no support from any government. And the only church that will send a chaplain is the United Methodist Church. She came to our meeting. I had been to her farm about a year and a half ago when I was there. It's about maybe 20 miles north of Ho Chi Minh City, out in the country. And I saw the children, and we had a worship service. And I met this delightful young couple, both of whom with very visible signs of Agent Orange. And they both said to me a year and a half ago, "Bishop, we want to be Methodist preachers. God's called us." Now, my immediate response was, "Now, wait a minute, we got to have a district committee, and you need to have a church." And, I went into my bishop mode. And then I heard God saying, "Would you just be quiet and listen?" This young couple, married. Against all odds, he has finished college. They said to me a year and a half ago, "We want to be Methodist preachers. And we want to serve with our friend." We call her the Mother Teresa of Vietnam. We want to serve right here. So 8 days ago, having finished college and begun the course of study, I handed him his certificate, his license to preach. Now you see, God was already at work and invited me to participate.